My parents sold our childhood home to fund my brother's failing business. Reddit stories. Years of sacrifice were erased with one family decision message. What they called an investment exposed how disposable I'd always been. Hi, I'm Lucas, 33, and 3 weeks ago my parents informed me, in the most casually devastating way possible, that they'd sold my childhood home so they could invest more strategically in my brother's future. Small detail. I'm the one who paid the property taxes for 7 years. Even smaller detail. My brother Ethan is 29, unemployed, and once tried to start a luxury candle empire by melting down old Yankee candles and reselling them at farmers' markets for $45 each. But sure. Let's invest strategically. It all started on a Wednesday evening. I just finished sanding the banister of the staircase in my townhouse, the one I bought entirely on my own, and I was feeling pretty good about my progress. Then the Mitchell family group chat buzzed. Mom. Big news. We made a family decision. Dad. Finally moving forward. Feels good. Ethan added 3 fire emojis, which was concerning because the last time he used fire emojis he ended up burning a hole in my parents' deck while testing candle heat retention science. I waited. And then Mom sent a photo of a real estate sign in front of my childhood home. Sold. Under it. Heading to closing. Proud of this next chapter. I blinked at the screen. Read it twice. 3 times. Then I typed, "You sold the house?" Mom responded instantly, like she'd been waiting. "Yes, honey." And guess what? We're giving the proceeds to Ethan so he can relaunch his business. I stared at that sentence so long I swear I could feel my blood pressure rising like a NASA countdown. Proceeds. Not some. Not a portion. All. Dad chimed in. He deserves a fresh start. His passion is entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship. The man once tried to trademark the phrase, "Scent your destiny." Then Mom dropped the real bomb. "We hope you'll understand. You already have your life together. Ethan needs support." There it was. The family motto I'd spent 20 years trying to outrun. Lucas is fine. No matter how much I did, how hard I worked, how much of my own life I sacrificed to help, it always boiled down to that. Lucas is fine. Lucas doesn't need help. Lucas will figure it out. Ethan? Ethan needs support. Translation: unlimited bailouts and zero accountability. I typed back. Why didn't you tell me? Mom! It all happened so fast. Also, we assumed you wouldn't mind since you're not emotionally attached to the house. I literally renovated half that house growing up. I learned to fix drywall in that house. I buried 3 pets in the backyard of that house. But sure. Not attached. Then Ethan messaged me privately. "Bruh, guess who's getting a warehouse space?" Warehouse. A warehouse. For the candle empire. I didn't reply. I didn't trust myself not to invent new curse words. And the worst part? This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. No. This was just the moment I realized something inside me had finally snapped. I wasn't going to be fine anymore. Not for them. Not at my own expense. And this time? I wasn't letting it slide quietly. Not again. Not ever. I didn't sleep that night. Not in a dramatic, pacing the floor, staring at the moon way. More like lying completely still in the dark, eyes open, brain replaying every moment of the last 15 years like it was preparing a legal brief for God. Because this wasn't just about the house. This was about every single time my parents had rewritten reality to make Ethan the center of the universe, and me the stable background prop. By morning, something in my chest felt hollow. Not sad. Not angry. Just done. At 8:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Mom. Honey, since you're so good with numbers, can you help Ethan build a business plan for his relaunch? I stared at that message the way one stares at a pothole right before slamming into it. Ethan didn't need a business plan. He needed a financial conservatorship. Before I could type anything, Ethan texted me directly. Ethan. Yo, you free today? Need help figuring out wholesale pricing. I want my candles to be luxury but affordable but also exclusive but also widely accessible. You get it. I did not get it. Not even a little. Then another message came through from Mom, and this one might go into the Hall of Fame of parental audacity. And sweetheart, since the house sold faster than expected, we put part of the proceeds toward paying off Ethan's credit card debt. We assumed you wouldn't mind. My jaw actually dropped. Let me explain something crucial. Ethan's credit card bill last month was $14,782. Do you know how you rack up a bill like that? Not meals. Not gas. Not medical emergencies. No. He bought something called a candle extruder, which, according to his own words, accelerates wax destiny. I set the phone down, took a breath, picked it back up, and typed the most polite rage text in human history. When exactly were you planning to tell me any of this? Dad responded. Dad. We didn't want you to feel obligated to weigh in. This was a parental decision. Parent. Al. They spelled it out like they were reading from the brochure of Bad Choices Incorporated. Then the kicker. Lucas, you're doing well. You don't need anything from us. Ethan does. Ah, yes. The family refrain. The national anthem of Mitchell parenting. It hit me then, really hit me, that to them, my accomplishments weren't a source of pride. They were an excuse. A reason to funnel every resource, every bailout, every ounce of emotional labor into Ethan while expecting me to quietly clap from the sidelines. I wasn't fine. I'd never been fine. I just never complained. Mistake number 1. At 10 a.m., I drove to my parents' temporary condo, the one they were renting while Ethan figured out the warehouse situation. Mom opened the door with a bright smile that instantly faded when she saw my face. Lucas, honey, you look pale. Yeah, I said. It turns out getting blindsided financially has that effect. Dad stepped into view, arms crossed like he'd been preparing a lecture for hours. Let's discuss this calmly, he said, which was always his way of saying let us talk at you until you agree. Not today. I walked in, sat down, and calmly pulled out a folder, because unlike Ethan, my chaos is extremely organized. Mom blinked. What's that? Documentation, I said. For what? Dad asked, already sounding defensive. For everything I've paid for, I said. Including the years I covered the property taxes for the house you sold. Silence. Dead, absolute silence. Then Mom tried to recover. Oh, sweetheart, we thought that was your way of contributing. No, I said. It was my way of keeping the house from going into foreclosure while Ethan was between ventures. Dad muttered. This isn't about Ethan. I leaned back. Oh, but it is. And then I watched both of their expressions shift, first confusion, then irritation, then something else. Fear. Because for the first time in my entire life, I wasn't being fine. I was being honest. And they had absolutely no idea what was coming next. Dad's jaw tightened, the same expression he used when a smoke alarm went off or when Ethan tried to explain scent branding theory. He didn't like that I'd brought paperwork. He especially didn't like that I wasn't backing down. Lucas, Dad said slowly, we understand you're emotional. But the house was our asset. Ultimately, it's our decision how to use the proceeds. I nodded once. Right. And it's my decision what to do with the information I'm about to share. Mom's eyes widened. Information? I opened the folder. Neatly tabbed. Chronologically organized. Color-coded, for clarity and heightened dramatic effect. Let's begin, I said, flipping to the first tab. This is a record of every payment I've made on the house since 2017. Mom winced. Dad leaned forward. Lucas. No interruptions, I said. Calm, polite, surgical. We're a strategic investing family now. Let's treat this like a board meeting. Dad didn't appreciate the sarcasm. Mom looked like she might pass out. I continued. Property taxes for 7 years. Winter heating oil 3 times when the furnace broke. Plumbing repairs. Roof patching. New water heater. Mom whispered, I thought you wanted to handle those repairs. No, I corrected. I wanted the house to not collapse while Ethan was experimenting with aromatic synergies. Dad dragged a hand over his face. Lucas, this isn't productive. Oh, we're not even warmed up, I said, turning to the next tab. Here's where it gets interesting. I held up a stack of printed screenshots. Mom frowned. Those look like. Correct, I said. These are Ethan's Instagram stories from the past 12 months. Dad snapped. Why would you screenshot those? Because, I said, flipping one around. I wanted proof of how he spent the money you claimed he didn't have. Photo number 1. Ethan at a Miami rooftop bar with a caption. Manifesting abundance, baby. Photo number 2. A stack of unopened candle-making supplies. Caption. Investing in myself. Photo number 3. A rented Lamborghini. Caption. Grinding. Dad muttered. Oh my God! Mom whispered. Ethan, no. I didn't soften. No, I said, turning pages like a lawyer in a prestige drama. Here's the part you'll really hate. I placed one last document on the table. The county's official sale record of the house. Do you see the sale price? I asked. They nodded. And do you see the unpaid liens deducted from the proceeds? I pressed. Mom looked confused. We didn't have any liens. I leaned back. No, I said. You didn't. Ethan did. Dad's face drained of color. What? The IRS lien, I said. From when Ethan decided he didn't vibe with taxes for a couple years. Mom gasped. He told us that was all taken care of. Oh, it is, I said. Because you just paid it off, without knowing you did. And there it was. The moment. The shift. The exact second when my parents realized they had not made a strategic decision. They had been manipulated. Used. Played. By their golden child. Dad sat heavily on the couch. Mom covered her mouth with both hands. I closed the folder. So here's what's going to happen, I said, voice low and steady. Either Ethan pays me back the full amount I covered to keep that house standing, or I file a claim against the estate. Dad looked up sharply. You wouldn't. I would, Mom whispered. Lucas, that could ruin your brother. I held her gaze. No. Ethan ruined himself. I simply stopped subsidizing the destruction. And then, perfect timing. The front door opened. Ethan walked in, sunglasses on indoors, holding a smoothie labeled Moonfire Protein. He froze. Saw the folder. Saw our parents' faces. Then me. What's going on? I crossed my arms. Family meeting, I said. Take a seat. He gave a nervous laugh. Why? Dad looked at him with a mix of betrayal and dawning horror. Ethan, he said quietly, we need to talk about the IRS. Ethan blinked. Oh, he said. That. Mom's voice cracked. You told us that was handled. It is handled, Ethan said cheerfully. You guys paid it. The room went dead silent. Dead. Silent. And that was the moment. The exact midpoint where the entire story shifted. When my parents realized they hadn't sold the house to invest in Ethan's future. Ethan had sold them. And now? There was no going back. Ethan didn't understand the silence. Of course he didn't. Silence requires awareness. Ethan operates exclusively in the frequency range of loud confidence and zero self-reflection. He tossed his smoothie on the counter, shrugged off his jacket, and said, Look, if this is about the house thing, I told you guys, it's gonna pay off. Candle margins are insane if you scale right. Dad closed his eyes like he was praying for strength from ancestors who absolutely would have disowned Ethan. I stayed seated, calm, letting the tension build the way a surgeon waits for anesthesia to take effect before making the first incision. Dad finally spoke. Ethan. Lucas paid the property taxes for 7 years. Ethan blinked like the information was buffering in his brain. Okay? And? Mom let out a sound halfway between a sob and a swear. And? I repeated slowly. You never paid a single dollar of it. You knew they thought you were paying it, didn't you? Ethan raised both hands in defense. Whoa, hold on. I didn't lie. I just didn't clarify. Clarify what? I asked. That you've been financially carried by our parents since the Carter administration? Ethan rolled his eyes. Oh my God, Lucas! You always make everything so dramatic. I leaned forward. Your IRS lien was deducted from the house sale. So, he said. Solved. Problem handled. Win-win. Mom actually put her head in her hands. Dad looked seconds away from committing a homicide. I continued, voice steady, because nothing gets under a narcissist's skin more than someone who refuses to get emotional. Here's the issue, Ethan. You used money from a property I financially maintained to settle your mess. And now Mom and Dad are asking me to help you build a business plan for your next round of poor decisions. He scoffed. My business isn't poor decisions. I just haven't reached my breakthrough yet. Your breakthrough? I said. Your last 5 ventures were, let's list them. I held up fingers. 1. A dog walking app called Pupstairs. It had no dogs and no stairs. Ethan waved dismissively. Early beta. 2. A motivational candle line where each candle was supposed to release confidence-boosting scents. They smelled like burnt Splenda. People liked them. No one liked them, Ethan. A woman at the farmer's market cried. Dad barked. I remember that. She said it reminded her of a hospital fire. Ethan shrugged. Art is subjective. 3. I continued. You spent $7,000 trying to create a candle wick that changes colors as it burns. That was cutting-edge design. It exploded, Ethan. It literally exploded. Mom whispered, Oh God, the table. Dad whispered back, The table cost $1,200. Ethan crossed his arms like we were all unreasonable. You guys don't understand entrepreneurial vision. Dad stood up. What I understand, he said, voice shaking, is that your brother saved this family's home from foreclosure, and we let you take the profits. Ethan scoffed. He didn't save the home. You guys would have figured it out. Mom shook her head. No, Ethan, we wouldn't have. We thought you were contributing. We thought, her voice cracked, you were being responsible. Ethan shrugged again, like responsibility was a casual suggestion. That's on you for assuming. And that sentence broke something in my mother. Get out, she said. Ethan laughed, assuming she meant me. Yeah, Lucas. Get out, man. Seriously. You're killing the vibe. Mom lifted her head. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. Not Lucas, she said. You. Ethan froze. What? Dad pointed to the door. You heard your mother. Ethan looked between them like surely one of us would reveal this was an elaborate prank. You're kicking me out? He sputtered. When I'm this close to launching something huge? Dad snapped. You have been this close for 12 years. I shrugged. He's not wrong. Mom stood, wiping her eyes. We love you, Ethan. But love is not the same as enabling. Ethan looked like a man watching his ATM catch fire. This is insane, he said. Where am I supposed to go? Dad looked at me. Then back at Ethan. You're an entrepreneur, he said. Innovate. And here came the moment. The turning point inside the turning point. When Ethan turned to me, eyes narrowing. This is your fault. he hissed. You poisoned them. I laughed. Full laugh. No, Ethan. You did that yourself. I just finally stopped cleaning up after you. He pointed at me, shaking with rage. I'll be back, he said. And when I am, you'll regret this. I leaned back in my chair. No, I said softly. I really won't. Ethan stormed out, slamming the doors so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. Mom exhaled a shaky breath. Dad stared at the floor. I stood. Now, I said, about the reimbursement. Dad held up a hand. We'll handle it. Whatever we owe you, you'll get. Mom nodded. And Lucas, we are so sorry. I let the apology hang in the air a moment, letting them feel the weight of it. Then, this doesn't fix everything, I said gently. But it's a start. And for the first time in my entire life, my parents looked at me. Not as the fine son. Not as the reliable background character. But as someone they had profoundly, repeatedly wronged. A shift had begun. But the fallout? That was only getting started. For 3 days after Ethan's dramatic exit, the house felt quiet. Not peaceful. Not healed. Just quiet in the way a forest gets quiet after a wildfire. Nothing moving yet, nothing growing yet, just the stunned stillness after destruction. Mom checked on me constantly. Dad avoided eye contact like guilt was a physical weight he couldn't lift. But the strangest part? Ethan didn't call. Not once. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not even me with some unhinged monologue about betrayal and sabotage. And that silence wasn't normal. Not for Ethan. By day 4, the silence had grown so unnerving that even Dad said, "Do you think he's okay?" I shrugged. "He's resourceful. He'll land on his feet." Mom winced. "That's exactly what we used to say about you, Lucas." I let that sit for a moment. She wasn't wrong. Day 6 is when the storm finally hit. It happened at 7:14 a.m. I was making coffee in my apartment when my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Unknown. Lucas, it's Tyler from Novabank Collections. Please call regarding your brother Ethan. I stared at it. Then I read it again. Then a third time. Because there were 3 possibilities. Ethan had listed me as a financial reference. Ethan had listed me as a financial guarantor. Ethan, in peak Ethan fashion, had done something far worse. I called. Tyler answered immediately. "Hi, Mr. Fraser. Thanks for returning the call. This concerns an outstanding debt of..." "I'm not responsible for any of Ethan Fraser's debts," I said automatically. Tyler paused. "Oh. Good. You said that fast, so I figured you already knew." "Knew what?" A paper shuffle. A sigh. The voice of someone who has had to deliver this speech too many times. "Mr. Fraser, your brother listed you as his employer." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Yes. On multiple credit applications. He also submitted pay stubs." "I don't employ Ethan." "I assumed as much," Tyler said lightly, given that the pay stubs were, well, photoshopped. I rubbed my temples. "How bad is it?" "Bad. He took out 5 credit cards in the last 6 months. Missed payments on all of them. Currently being investigated for falsified income verification." My stomach dropped. Investigated by who? Visa, Discover, American Express, and another shuffle of papers. The IRS. Great. Just what any family needs to spice up their week. I exhaled slowly. "Where is he?" "We're not allowed to disclose that." I glared at the wall. "I'm not asking for his location. I'm asking if he's reachable." Another pause. "Actually, Mr. Fraser, that's the problem." "What?" "We can't reach him at all. Every number on file is disconnected." My chest tightened. Not out of sympathy. Out of recognition. Because this was a pattern I knew too well. When Ethan ran out of excuses, he disappeared. I ended the call, grabbed my keys, and drove to my parents' house on instinct. Mom opened the door before I even knocked. "You heard?" she whispered, eyes already brimming. I nodded. Dad's voice drifted from the living room. "Sit down. We need to tell you something." I stepped inside. And that's when they told me the part Ethan hadn't. He hadn't just falsified credit applications. He hadn't just taken out new cards. He hadn't just blown through the sale money from the house. No. He'd also done something reckless, desperate, and depressingly predictable. He had taken out a $12,000 cash advance. Using Dad's name. Not with permission. Not with discussion. Not with any semblance of adult reasoning. He'd forged Dad's signature. Dad held up the letter when I walked in, the official notice from the credit bureau. "He stole my identity," Dad whispered, voice breaking. "My own son." Mom covered her face. I sat down slowly. Even for Ethan, this was a new level. A level that came with jail time. We sat in silence until Mom finally spoke the question none of us wanted to answer. What do we do?" Dad looked at me. And I realized something in that moment. They weren't just asking for advice. They were asking for leadership. After all these years of treating me like the self-sufficient one, the one who didn't need attention or help or emotional support, now they needed me. And I had a choice. I could let them sink the way they'd let me sink so many times before. Or I could be the adult in the room, again. I took a slow breath. "We file a police report," I said. Mom gasped. Dad stared at me in horror. "But he's our son," Mom whispered. "And I'm yours too," I said quietly. "But that didn't stop you from letting him drain your savings or take credit for the taxes I paid or convince you I didn't matter." Silence. Dad swallowed. "He'll go to jail." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe this is what finally forces him to change." Mom shook her head. I can't put my own child in handcuffs." "You're not putting him in handcuffs," I said softly. "He put himself there." Dad closed his eyes. Mom started to cry again. And for the first time ever, they didn't ask. "Lucas, can you bail him out?" they asked. "Lucas, what should we do now?" I sat forward. Calm. Steady. Resolved. "You do nothing," I said. "You let him face the consequences he created. You let him feel the impact of his own decisions. You let him grow up." Mom wiped her eyes. "And you?" she whispered. "What will you do?" I stood. "Me?" I said. "I'm done saving Ethan. But I'm not done saving this family." And that was true. Because Ethan's downfall wasn't the finale. It was the beginning of something else entirely. The rebuilding. Mom didn't sleep that night. I know because she called me at 2:17 a.m., voice trembling, whispering like guilt itself might overhear her. "Lucas, what if he's hurt?" "He's not hurt," I said calmly. "How do you know?" "Because hurt people call for help. Guilty people disappear." There was silence on the other end. The silence of a mother realizing something she had spent 28 years refusing to admit. Ethan didn't need protection. He needed accountability. Dad took longer to break. Pride ages slower than fear. He didn't call at 2 a.m. He called at 6:30 a.m., his voice gravel and uncertainty. "Lucas, if we file a police report, will they arrest him immediately?" "I don't know. What if he comes home first?" "Then he comes home first." Dad exhaled shakily. "You really think this is the only way?" I hesitated, only for a second. "Yes. I do." By noon that day, the universe proved me right. Mom called again, this time breathless. He came home. I froze halfway through stirring my coffee. "When?" "Just now." He walked in the door like nothing happened. Of course he did. Ethan always assumed the world would reset for him. That rules were negotiable. That consequences were optional. Is Dad there? Yes. Put me on speaker. I heard a shuffle, a click, and then, "Hey, little bro." His voice. Cheerful. Unbothered. A man strolling confidently through a life he'd set on fire. I didn't match his energy. "Ethan. We need to talk." "Oh, good, because wow, you would not believe the week I've had." "I would." I cut in. Collections called me. Silence. Thick. Sudden. Like air pulled out of a room. Okay, well, that's not. Look, it's complicated. No. I said. It's not. Dad's voice came through next, low and heavy. "Ethan, did you take out a credit card under my name?" Another silence. This one worse. Finally, Ethan muttered, "Dad, you said I could use your social for emergencies?" Dad's voice cracked. "I meant for your FAFSA 10 years ago. Not for this." Ethan groaned like he was the victim. "It was just temporary. I was going to pay it off." "With what?" I snapped. "More credit cards? More fake income? More lies?" Mom whispered, "Ethan, we saw the forged signature." Ethan inhaled sharply. "That's a strong word." "No," Dad said. "It's the correct word." Another beat of silence. Then Ethan delivered the single most predictable sentence of his entire life. "You're all overreacting." If the man's middle name wasn't legally overreacting, it should have been. I stayed steady. "No, Ethan. This is felony fraud." He scoffed. "You're always so dramatic." "I'm the one keeping your parents out of bankruptcy and prison, Ethan. If anything, I'm not dramatic enough." Dad finally cracked. "Son, we have to file a police report." Mom gasped. Ethan laughed. A sharp, humorless sound that made my skin crawl. "You think you're going to what? Turn me in? Your own son? Your only other child?" "No," Mom whispered. "We have 2 children. And one of them," I added, "has been carrying the whole family while the other stole their identities." He snapped. "Lucas," he hissed, stretching my name into a threat. "You are loving this, aren't you? Mr. Perfect finally gets to watch Ethan screw up." "I watched that for 20 years," I said. "It stopped being entertaining a long time ago." He said nothing. So I kept going. "We're not protecting you anymore. You can't do this." "We can." "You don't even understand why I did it." "Then explain," I said. He didn't. He just breathed heavily into the phone like a cornered animal. Dad broke the silence. "Ethan, if you want us to reconsider the police report, then you need to come clean. All of it. Right now." A long, ugly pause. Then Ethan said the last sentence he should have ever chosen. "No. I'm not confessing S***T. And if you turn me in, I will tell them all of this was Lucas' idea." Mom gasped. Dad slammed something, maybe the table. I smiled. Because Ethan, dear, delusional Ethan, had just stepped on the exact landmine I knew he would. "Perfect," I said. "We're done here." I hung up before anyone else could speak. Mom called back immediately. I didn't answer. Dad texted. I didn't respond. Because this wasn't my mess to manage anymore. This was the moment where parents became parents again. Where consequences stopped being optional. Where Ethan learned the difference between a safety net and a trampoline. And I'll tell you something that surprised even me. When I put my phone down, I felt nothing but clarity. Because Ethan hadn't given us a choice. He'd given us a deadline. And the countdown had just started. They filed the police report on a Thursday. Not because they wanted to. Not because they were ready. But because the bank investigator told them something that shattered the last piece of denial they'd been clinging to. "If you don't report the fraud, Mr. Frazier, then you become the primary suspect." Dad had gone pale. Mom had started shaking. And for the first time in his life, Ethan wasn't there to talk his way out of it. So they did it. They walked into the precinct, sat down with an officer, and told the truth they'd spent years pretending not to see. Their son had stolen from them, had forged documents, had used their identities, had left them carrying the consequences. They came home hollow. Mom cried. Dad drank half a bottle of whiskey and stared at the wall like it was staring back. I didn't say I told you so. I didn't need to. Ethan lasted 4 more days before everything collapsed. On Monday morning, I got a call from Dad. His voice was the voice of someone witnessing their child's bones break in real time. They arrested him. I closed my eyes. Where? In front of Grandma's house, Dad whispered. He went there for money. She saw the warrant notice. She called the police herself. That hit harder than I expected. Grandma adored Ethan. He'd always been her little prince. If even she was done. Ethan had truly crossed the Rubicon. Dad kept talking, voice shaking. He screamed when they cuffed him. Said we betrayed him. Said you brainwashed us. Of course he did. Ethan could commit arson and still insist the Flames owed him an apology. I stayed silent. Dad inhaled raggedly. We're going to the arraignment. Will you come? That wasn't just a question. It was a turning point. For years they'd excluded me from decisions involving Ethan. Shielded him. Justified him. Centered him. But now they needed my steadiness. My spine. My clarity. Yeah, I said. I'll be there. The courthouse smelled like disinfectant and old carpet. Mom clutched tissues in her fist. Dad looked 20 years older. And then they brought Ethan out. Wrists cuffed. Eyes wild. Hair unwashed. He scanned the courtroom and locked onto us. Mom sobbed when she saw him. Dad looked like he wanted to disintegrate. Me? I felt nothing. Not joy. Not triumph. Not guilt. Just the quiet understanding that some people don't change until the world stops giving them choices. They seated him at the defense table. He turned toward us and hissed under his breath. This is your fault. The bailiff told him to face forward. The judge read the charges. Identity theft. Fraud. Forgery. Credit abuse. Intent to deceive. Mom cried harder. Ethan glanced back at me again. His eyes were full of hatred. And fear. Mostly fear. Because for the first time in his life, his last name wasn't going to protect him. His charm wasn't going to save him. His excuses weren't going to work. He was alone. Truly, undeniably alone. The judge denied bail, too great a flight risk, and ordered him held until trial. Ethan's jaw dropped. What? No, my parents are right there. Tell her you'll take me home. He turned frantically toward Mom. Mom? Tell her you'll take me home. Tell her. Mom covered her face. Dad looked down at his shoes. Ethan's breathing quickened. He switched targets to me. You. He spat. You did this. You've wanted this for years. You're finally getting your revenge. I stood slowly. Walked to the rail where he could see me clearly. And I said the words I had carried for a decade. No, Ethan. I didn't want revenge. I wanted you to stop destroying everything you touched. He went still. You want to know the truth? I added quietly. This isn't punishment. This is prevention. His mouth dropped open. The bailiff pulled him back. The judge ordered him removed. As they led him away, he shouted, Lucas, I'm your brother. You can't let them do this to me. I didn't respond. Because he was wrong. I wasn't letting anyone do anything to him. He built the fire. He lit the match. He burned the bridge. All I did was finally stop walking across it. Mom, Dad, and I walked out into the cold afternoon sunlight. Mom leaned on me. Dad put a hand on my shoulder. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the forgotten child. I was the one holding my family together. But this wasn't the end. The trial was coming. And with it, a decision that would change all of our lives. Maybe forever. 3 days after the arraignment, my parents' house felt like a hospice for hope. Mom moved slowly, like her bones were full of sand. Dad spoke in clipped, guilty syllables. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, was the empty shape of Ethan. I'd been stopping by every day, partly to check on them, partly because I didn't trust them not to sabotage the one necessary decision they'd finally made. On the 4th evening, Dad handed me a letter the district attorney had sent. He could get 2 to 5 years, he whispered, reading over my shoulder like he still didn't believe the words existed in print. Mom closed her eyes. He won't survive prison. I didn't say what I was thinking. He survived years of using everyone he loved. He'll survive this. What he won't survive is 0 consequences. Instead, I said, he'll be okay. And Mom gave me this look, an aching, hollow look that said she wished she could believe that. Then the letters came. The first one arrived on a Saturday. Dad placed it on the kitchen table like a cursed object. From Ethan, he said. Mom's hand trembled when she opened it. I watched her eyes scan the page, soften briefly, then harden. She passed it to me. It wasn't what I expected. It wasn't rage. It wasn't denial. It wasn't threats. It was worse. Manipulation. He'd written, Mom, Dad, I know I made mistakes, but I need you. Prison is dangerous. I'm scared. Please talk to the DA. Please get me out. I'll change. I promise. Don't let Lucas turn you against me. 2 sentences in and he'd already weaponized fear, guilt, and me. Dad rubbed his forehead. Maybe we should talk to the DA. Try to get leniency. Mom nodded desperately. He's terrified, Lucas. I pushed the letter back to them. He's terrified of accountability, I said. Not prison. Mom recoiled. How can you say that? Because, I said, tapping the letter, he didn't apologize. Not once. Not for the fraud. Not for the identity theft. Not for the damage. He only apologized for being caught. Dad flinched. I continued. Read the part where he blames me again. Read the part where he asks you to undo the one boundary you finally set. That letter isn't remorse. It's strategy. Dad stared at Ethan's handwriting for a long time. I just keep thinking, he's our son. And I'm not? I asked quietly. Dad's jaw tightened. That's not what I meant. But it's what you act like, I said. Every time Ethan's in trouble, you two bend the world to save him. And every time I succeed, you assume I don't need anything. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Oh, sweetheart, we didn't mean. I know, I said. But that doesn't change the result. They didn't reply. Because they finally saw it. Really, truly saw it. The scale had always been tilted. And this time, Ethan's weight had broken it. Week 2. Another letter. This one was angrier, edged with panic. You ruined my life. You let Lucas manipulate you. You've abandoned your own blood. I was stressed, Dad, you know that. Tell the judge it was a misunderstanding. Why aren't you answering my calls? Dad folded that letter in half with surgical precision and placed it in a drawer. No one cried that time. Progress. Then came the 3rd letter. The one that changed everything. Not because it was kind, it wasn't. Not because it was remorseful, it wasn't. But because of one sentence written near the bottom in sloppy handwriting. If you don't get me out, I'll tell the judge everything you did too. Mom blinked. Everything we did? What does that mean? Dad went pale. I'd never seen color leave someone's face that fast. Dad? I asked. What is he talking about? He sat down like his knees finally gave out. Mom looked between us anxiously. Honey, what is he talking about? Dad stared at the table. 4 years, he said slowly. We've been helping him, financially, off the books. I frowned. That's not illegal. He shook his head. No. Not that. Lucas, your brother, he told the IRS I employ him. My blood ran cold. What? Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Gerald, what? Dad kept talking monotone, like he was confessing to a priest and hoping for forgiveness. He forged documentation. Fake W-2s. Fake income. Fake withholding. It was supposed to help him qualify for an apartment, then a loan, then another loan. He told me it was temporary. He swore he'd fix it before tax season. You didn't report the correction, I said, voice flat. Dad could barely nod. Mom whispered, "Oh my God, we committed tax fraud." No, Dad said shakily. Ethan committed fraud. I facilitated it. The room went silent. The kind of silent that only arrives when truth detonates. Now I finally understood Ethan's threat. He wasn't bluffing. If he told the DA, if he showed the documents, if he proved Dad knew, my father could go to prison too. Mom grabbed the table. No. 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 He wouldn't. He wouldn't do that to his father. I stared at her. He forged Dad's name on a credit card and stole thousands. He'll burn all of us if it helps him. Dad whispered. He's cornered Lucas. Cornered animals bite. And suddenly the stakes weren't about Ethan anymore. They were about us. Our family. Our future. Our safety. Mom asked the question none of us wanted to face. What do we do now? Dad looked at me. So did Mom. Not to blame me. Not to guilt me. But because for the first time in their lives, they needed my judgment more than their instinct. You were right, Dad said quietly. Lucas, guide us. What happens next? I took a slow, steady breath. Because we were no longer dealing with a troubled son. We were dealing with a threat. A threat with our last name. And the next move we made would decide how far this damage spread. 3 days later, the DA called. Ethan had confessed everything, including Dad's part, but added one unexpected line. He didn't know what he was signing. I lied to him. It spared Dad entirely. Not redemption, not forgiveness, just Ethan finally breaking the cycle. When I left the courthouse, I realized something simple. My family wasn't healed, but it was finally honest. And that was enough.